Hey everyone, it's Holly. Welcome back to part 7 of the Student Hat. I know that I said in part 6 that I might start another series, and I very well will do that. But before I release any of those videos in the new series, I want to finish the Student Hat. So this might take a while, but we'll get through it. So, coaching, the HCO Bulletin of the 24th of May, 1968. In order to help you do the best you possibly can in the course as far as being a coach is concerned, below you will find a few data that will assist you. 1. Coach with a purpose. Have for your goal when you're coaching that the student is going to get the training drill correct. Be purposeful in working toward obtaining this goal. Whenever you correct the student as a coach, just don't do it with no reason, with no purpose. Have the purpose in mind for the student to get a better understanding of the training drill and to do it to the best of his ability. 2. Coach with reality. Be realistic in your coaching. When you give an origination to a student, really make it an origination, not just something that the sheet said you should say, so that it is as if the student was having to handle it exactly as you say under real conditions and circumstances. This does not mean, however, that you really feel the things that you're giving the student, such as saying to him, "My leg hurts." This does not mean that your leg should hurt, but you should say it in such a manner as to convey to the student that your leg hurts. So, act. Another thing about this is do not use any experiences from your past to coach with. Be inventive in present time. Coach with an intention. Behind all your coaching should be your intention that by the end of the session, your student will be aware that he is doing better at the end of it than he did at the beginning. The student must have a feeling that he has accomplished something in the training step, no matter how small it is. It is your intention, and always should be while coaching, that the student you are coaching be a more able person and have a greater understanding of that on which he is being coached. 4. In coaching, take up only one thing at a time. For example, using TR4, if the student arrives at the goal set up for TR4, then check over one at a time the earlier TRs. Is he confronting you? Does he originate the question to you each time as his own, and did he really intend for you to receive it? Are his acknowledgments ending the cycles of communication, etc.? But only coach these things one at a time, never two or more at a time. Make sure that the student does each thing you coach him on correctly before going on to the next training step. The better a student gets at a particular drill or a particular part of a drill, you should demand, as a coach, a higher standard of ability. This does not mean that you should be never satisfied. It does mean that a person can always get better, and once you've reached a certain plateau of ability, then work toward a new plateau. As a coach, you should always work in the direction of better and more precise coaching. Never allow yourself to do a sloppy job of coaching, because you would be doing your student a disservice, and we doubt that you would like the same disservice. If you're ever in doubt about the correctness of what he's doing or of what you're doing, then the best thing is to ask the supervisor. He'll be very glad to assist you by referring you to the correct materials. In coaching, never give an opinion as such, but always give your directions as a direct statement, rather than saying, "I think," or, "Well, maybe it might be this way," etc. As a coach, you're primarily responsible for the session and the results that are obtained on the student. This does not mean, of course, that you are totally responsible, but that you do have a responsibility toward the student and the session. Make sure you always run good control on the student and give him good directions. Once in a while, the student will start to rationalize and justify what he's doing if he's doing something wrong. He'll give you reasons why and becauses. Talking about such things at great length does not accomplish very much. The only thing that does accomplish the goals of the TR and resolves any differences is doing the training drill. You will get further by doing it than by talking about it. In the training drills, the coach should coach with the material given under training stress and purpose on the training sheet. These training drills occasionally have a tendency to upset the student. There's a possibility that during a drill, a student may become angry or extremely upset or experience some misemotion. Should this occur, the coach must not back off. He should continue the training drill until he can do it without stress or duress and he feels good about it. So don't back off, but push the student through whatever difficulty he may be having. There is a small thing that most people forget to do, and that's telling the student when he's gotten the drill right or he's done a good job on a particular step. Besides correcting wrongnesses, there's also complimenting rightness. You very definitely flunk the student for anything that amounts to self-coaching. The reason for this is that the student will tend to introvert and will look too much at how he is doing and what he is doing rather than just doing it. As a coach, keep your attention on the student and how he's doing, and don't become so interested in what you yourself are doing that you neglect the student and are unaware of his ability or inability to do the drill correctly. It's easy to become interesting to a student, to make him laugh and act up a bit. But your main job as a coach is to see how good he can get in each training drill, and that is what you should have your attention on. That and how well he's doing. To a large degree, the progress of the student is determined by the standard of coaching. Being a good coach produces auditors who will in turn produce good results on their pre-clears. Good results produce better people. It's about being a good coach, flunking when they need to be flunked, complimenting them when they're doing stuff right. Take up one TR at a time. Coach with intention, obviously tone 40. Coach with reality, but still act. Coach with a purpose. No shit. Alright, let's cover Method 9 on the 30th of January, 1973, revised the 29th of December, 1973. This cancels the Board Technical Bulletin of the 30th of January, 1973, revised Issue 2 of the same title. Method 9. Method 9 word clearing is corrective word clearing, as compared to Method 7, which is educational word clearing and has its own exact procedure. Method 9 is done on any specific written text, usually by subject, for example, the CS series, the data series, or one or more PLs or HCOBs on a related subject, for example. Listing and nulling, rudiments, or key hat PL or PLs. The procedure is 1. The student or staff member reads the text out loud. He's not on the meter. 2. The word clearer has a copy of the text and reads along with the student silently. 3. If the student leaves out a word or stumbles or exhibits any physical or verbal manifestation while reading the text, the word clearer immediately asks for the misunderstood word or term and gets the meanings cleared with a dictionary and put into sentences until the word is understood and VGIs are present. So here's more problems with word clearing. Now, if you're doing Method 9, God forbid you stumble on reading, and I stumble on reading this stuff all the time. I'm far from perfect, and I'm pretty sure you guys didn't expect that of me anyway. I have to cut out a lot here because I fuck up so many times on sentences, but apparently that means that I have misunderstood words in the text, which I probably do, but I don't care. I ain't going through all this shit, and I guarantee you that the misunderstood word is going to have its own fucking word chain of like 50,000 things. Not even going to try. 4. Student rereads the last section and continues the text to completion, picking up and handling all MUs as evidenced by verbal or physical manifestations. 5. Student or staff member sent to the PC examiner for FNVGIs check. If no FNVGIs, student or staff member returns to word clearer to complete to FNVGIs or WCCL, that's the word clearing correction list, if required. The text is now restudied by the student or staff member. Method 9 can be used before or after the fact of a flub. For example, any upper level CS to get an OK to CS should M9 the CS series, restudy, and star rate, and do in clay as a basic action in qual. Or an auditor who's flubbing on assessment gets M9 on the assessment pack. Or a supervisor who is flubby gets M9 on key mini case supervisor course materials. In each case, the material's word cleared must be restudied and star rated. Word clears must be specifically and extensively drilled to do M9 or M7 so that they can read a text and pick up any and all physical manifestations at the same time. Only then is an OK to do M9 or M7 issued. The fact of having had material word cleared using a different method does not prevent M9 being used. In fact, it would not be unusual for a specific material to be handled first with M6, then M9, then M4, if one wanted to be very thorough. We'll cover all the different methods of word clearing, by the way, in future videos. In order to ensure application, all word clearing must be followed by a restudy of the materials word cleared. Word clearing clears the material so it can now be studied and applied. Method 9 is extremely powerful and effective. So once you clear a word, you have to restudy everything. Again, waste of time. Alright. We've got a policy letter from the 4th of August, 1981. This cancels the board policy letter, the 27th of September, 1963. Training technology pink sheets. So, pink sheets. A pink sheet is a study assignment given to a student when he's missed something he should have learned earlier. It calls for restudy and checkout of the specific materials he missed. It's called a pink sheet because it's issued on a pink sheet of paper. I developed the technology of pink sheets in 1963 at St. Hill. It was piloted on the St. Hill Special Briefing course where much of today's training technology was developed. The original pink sheet application was to the St. Hill co-audit, where all students audited in one big room. Later, the use of pink sheets was extended to correct flubs in coaching sessions with great success, as the supervision of coaching has always been one of the primary functions of a course supervisor. Then, still later, the use of pink sheets was extended as a corrective action for all study. The technology on pink sheets is being reissued here in HCOPL form with some revisions to give you the entire up-to-date use of pink sheets. So how long is this? 1 page, 2 pages, 3 pages, 4 pages, 5 pages. Okay. 5 pages. We got this. Why pink sheet? All the study in the world isn't going to make a professional. Learning the data and the theory of a subject is vitally important. Perfecting your practical drills is essential. However, the final test lies with the question, are you getting results with the data? Whether you're getting results or not is totally dependent on whether or not you are actually applying the data and theory you've learned and are utilizing the practical skills you've developed. The bridge between the learning of data and development of practical skills and their actual application can be mightily bolstered by the pink sheet system of training supervision. A student's ability to apply study tech on himself and his twin can also be mightily bolstered by the pink sheet system of training supervision. The student is responsible for all the materials and courses he studied earlier. If he's unable to apply or use any of his material, then a pink sheet is issued to handle the situation. A pink sheet is not a substitute for retreading or retraining. It's a quick and precise remedy. A course supervisor or case supervisor who is CSing student auditing should keep a good supply of pink sheets on hand. Their application encourages fast, precise training. They're for use. How to issue pink sheets. 1. Put two sheets of pink foolscap size paper on a clipboard with a carbon between. 2. At the top of the sheet, write the name of the student, student auditor, or coach being observed, the date, and the name of the observer. 3. Head a wide column on the right-hand side of the sheet with observations, a narrow column to the left of center with theory and practical application, and 2 more narrow columns to the left of center headed coach and supervisor. 4. Take the above with your ballpoint into the vicinity of the student or the auditing or coaching session to be observed, close enough to hear and see what's going on without intruding. Or in CSing student auditing, have a number of pink sheets to hand. 5. Write in the wide column labeled observations exactly what's happening in the session, coaching session, while the student and his twin are studying. This is very difficult to do for most people, especially for someone at the case level of only able to confront own evaluations. Do not look for study, auditing, and coaching errors. Just look and record what's happening. Do not write in evaluations. Do not write in invalidations. Do not attempt to correct or teach in the observations columns. Simply observe the session and record what's happening. 6. After you've filled 1 or more pages of the observations column, now is the time to evaluate. Study what you've observed taking place and see if anything actually diverges from the standard use of study tech or the correct theory and practice of auditing or coaching. 7. Write in the column headed Theory and Practical Assignment the date and title of the exact bulletin or tape containing the correct data or the title of the exact practical drill, which will correct the error recorded in the observations column. If a session observed was a complete shambles, it means that some basic fundamental of auditing or coaching is absent in the student's repertory. Don't overload the student with tons of drills and theory assignments. Look over your observations column carefully, and it will suddenly dawn on you that this student hasn't a clue about the auditing cycle or doesn't know the difference between the needle and the TA on the meter. If you still can't find the main difficulty, you can always sit the student down and ask something like, what happens when you sit down in front of a PC? Or what's the meter for? You'll be surprised at some of the answers you'll get. Find the main error or difficulty and write your pink sheet to get him corrected on that. On the other hand, you might find that you'll fill up a couple of pages of pink sheet without recording any errors. The student didn't happen to goof, or the coaching drill is going well, or standard study tech is being used. That's fine, send it to him without any assignment. It'll still help. 8. Send the top copy of the pink sheet to the student and file the carbon copy in the pink sheet folder. When the completed top copy is returned by the student with all the necessary signatures, throw away the carbon copy and file the completed pink sheet in the student's folder. Examples of pink sheets. The following will be an incorrect one. So under Theory and Practical Assignment, we've got TRs, OT, TRO, TR4. Meter reading, Method 4, star rate, a certain tape called comm cycles and auditing. The observations, poor TRO, auditor can't read the meter, lousy handling of auditing cycle. In the above example, the observer has evaluated, invalidated, only made general comments. The above may all be true, but the student auditor is not helped by them and the assignments don't pinpoint his major difficulty. The following would be a helpful pink sheet. So we got M9 star rate on this tape, comm cycles and auditing, and TRs, OT, TR0 to TR4. Auditor leaning on table, toying with the TA and pen. Running, look around the room and find something you could have. After saying the chair, PC said, I don't think that answered the question. Auditor, look around the room and find something you could have. PC, that's an interesting picture on the wall. The auditor says, okay, and gives the next command. Auditor misses the floating needle when PC says he can have the entire room and continues running the process. In the above example, the observer states exactly what's happening in the auditing session. The majority of observations noted show an inability to complete an auditing cycle. Even the missed floating needle was an incomplete cycle. The student is therefore assigned material that will help him learn and apply the auditing cycle. How many times can you say cycle? There may be other things that can help him, like meter drills. However, adding these to the pink sheet will only disperse his attention, which should be applied to learning and using the auditing cycle. The following would be an incorrect pink sheet. So you got your M9 star rate on an HCOB called coaching. You got your M9 star rate on a KSW Series 1. We've already read that one. Observations. Doesn't know how to coach, got angry with twin, and tried to explain the text. Explaining the text, that's verbal tech. In the above example, the supervisor has evaluated, invalidated, and only made general comments. The above may all be true, but the coach is not helped by the observations noted, and the assignments do not pinpoint the major difficulty. The following would be a helpful pink sheet for the same situation. So we got restudy, method 4 star rate, a study tape called Studying Data Assimilation, and a tape called Study Gradients and Nomenclature. M9 star rate and drill, the word clearing series 31, method 3 word clearing. Student became groggy. Coach had his twin find a misunderstood word, and student brightened up but still had trouble understanding material. Coach had him demo it, but when twin took a long time, coach became irritated and demoed the concept for the student. On two-way comms with the coach, found he didn't know how to continue clearing up MUs until the twin has very good indicators and can easily demo the material. In this second example of the same situation, the supervisor does not try to evaluate, but simply observes and notes down his observations. He steps in two-way comms with the coach to get more data, and the trouble becomes very apparent. It can then be corrected with an exact assignment of the correct material. Theory and practical assignment. The pink sheet should be done with the twin in both practical and theory. The twin first reviews the observations thoroughly with the student, finds and clears up the MUs, star rates him on the issue as assigned, and drills the student until the correct data is completely learned and understood, and until the student can perfectly execute the drill. Once this is done, the twin signs his name opposite the assignment notation on the pink sheet in the coach's column. Student's then ready for a checkout by the supervisor on the pink sheet material. Supervisor checkout. In checking out the assigned material on a student's pink sheet, the supervisor should carefully go over the observations with the student and have the student spot the specific errors he's made, then have the student give the correct data from the assigned bulletin or tape, or show by doing the practical drill that he has now mastered the skill that was poorly applied while studying or in the auditing or coaching session. Fucking run-on sentences, Hubbard. Holy shit. Specific attention should be paid to points that the student was observed to be weak in applying to his study, auditing, or coaching. Be doubly strict on these points to be sure the student doesn't continue to make the same errors again and again. If each pink sheet thoroughly corrects only one gross error, really knocks it out, the student's study, auditing, or coaching ability will improve markedly in a very short time. Conclusion. Pink sheets are never used as punishment or to make the student wrong. They are used to improve the student's study, auditing, or coaching ability by having him thoroughly learn data and practical skills that he's weak in. A student's weakness in data and skills often will not show up under the normal conditions of theory and practical testing, but they will stand out very plainly when he has to apply them in an actual auditing or coaching session or while actually studying. Therefore, a pink sheet assignment does not mean that the student hasn't learned the material if he's already passed it in theory or practical. It doesn't mean that he hasn't learned it well enough to utilize it while studying or under the duress of an actual auditing or coaching session. If a student has gone a few days without receiving a pink sheet, he should start screaming. If his auditing or coaching is not being observed and his weak points picked up, how does he expect to improve? So make a fuss, student, if you're not receiving pink sheets. And supervisors, keep a tabulation of when a student is issued a pink sheet so that you're sure to observe each student often. If you're actually making a fuss about not getting a pink sheet, you must be the kid who fucking asked the teacher to remember the homework from last night in school. People don't want to receive pink sheets because they don't want to have to go back, waste time, and then go back to this. It's going to take so much time to get a pink sheet done, plus all the others that you're going to get during your course, that it's fucking useless is what I'm trying to say. It's useless. All right, we have a bulletin of the 8th of May, 1969, reissued the 23rd of January, 77. Important study data. Number of times over the materials equals certainty in results. Results in the student's own case is a guarantee of successful application by the student. The more you go over, the better you are. So if the student is improving in his own auditing case, then there's successful application. But how does the student's own auditing case gain means successful application? I don't understand how that goes from point A to point B. Like, Hubbard's logic doesn't make sense to me. But anyway. So, there are about 8 or so lectures here. And I was going to do like a reaction of me listening to them, or we could do reading the transcript, or we could have both up. We could listen to the audio and have the transcript. But I'm going to skip the lectures for now. And if you guys really want me to get to them, then I can do that. But until then, I think what we're going to do is just go to the next policy letter or bulletin. So, this is the HCO Bulletin of the 2nd of June, 1971, corrected and reissued on the 30th of December, 1972. This is called Confronting. The first requisite of any subject is the ability to confront the various components, things, parts, divisions, of the subject itself. All MUs, confusions, omissions, alterations of a subject begin with failures or unwillingness to confront. So it begins with someone not being there to study the subject? Or not being able to look at the subject? You can be confused at the subject, but still be confronting it. You could be studying it. The difference between a good pilot and a bad pilot depends, of course, on consistent study and practice, but underlying this, determining whether the person will study and practice, is the ability to confront the components of study in airplanes. A quick study, by which is meant a student who learns rapidly or a person who grasps a subject quickly, has a high ability to confront that subject. In a dramatic profession, the wild animal trainer who could confront wild animals remained alive. The one who couldn't confront was too slow of perception to live long. Well, that's literal confrontation. You are facing a wild animal. There's a difference between confronting an animal and confronting a course pack. In a more common line of work, the fast typist could confront study and typing in the first place, and the slow typist couldn't and can't. Maybe the slow typist is still learning how to study, is still learning how to be a typist. They might be slow because they don't know yet. But as they learn and practice, it will get better. The confusions about talent and native ability and such are resolved to no small extent when one recognizes the role played by the ability to confront. Basically, if one can just be there with it, he can then achieve the skill of communicating with whatever it is and handling it. Thus, before communicating with the components of a subject can properly begin, one must be able to be there comfortably with the components of the subject. All power depends on the ability to hold a location. To communicate, one must be able to hold to a location. Does he mean just be there? Does he mean just like, in the case of studying, he means just sitting there and actually reading, being able to look at the course material? This is even true in the physical universe. You can't move a chair unless you hold a position yourself near the chair. If you don't believe it, try it. Thus, the ability to communicate with precedes the ability to handle. But before one can communicate with something, one must be able to be in a location near it. The age-old puzzle of how some scholars can get A on a subject they've studied and then not be able to apply even a scrap of the data is resolved by this fact of confronting. They can confront the book, the class, and the thought, but they haven't attained the ability to confront the physical objects of the subject. At least such glib students can confront the book, the paper, the thought. They're partway there. Now, all they need to do is confront as well the physical things to which the subject is applied, and they would be able to apply what they know. Some people are not so lucky as to be glib students. They have to work up to being there with the book, paper, classroom, and teacher. Do you mean focusing on your thing, or are you talking about just being in the room with the subject? Thus, confronting is actually the ability to be there comfortably and perceive. All right. So let us confronting. Look up confronting. We're just going to do that. All right, so confronting. To face in hostility or defiance, to oppose, to present for acknowledgement, contradiction, etc., set face to face and deal with boldly or directly. That seems to be somewhat of the definition that Hubbard is using. So they're being there boldly. What the fuck? Why'd it go to directly? So it's going right to face and deal with boldly or directly. Well, yeah, obviously you have to be there with the material in order to do anything. Amazing reactions occur when conscious effort is made to do this. Dullness, perception trouble, fogginess, sleep, and even pains, emotions, and convulsions can occur when one knowingly sets out to be there and comfortably perceive with the various parts of a subject. So when you actually try to do it, stuff happens. But if you do it naturally, none of this stuff happens. These reactions discharge and vanish as one perseveres or continues, and it lasts, sometimes soon, sometimes after a long while. One can be there and perceive the component. As one is able to confront one part, he then finds it easier to confront other components. People have mental tricks they use to get around actual confronting, to be disinterested, to realize it's not important, to be sort of half dead, etc. But these discharge or run out as well eventually, and at last they can just be there and comfortably perceive. Eye blinks, swallows, twitches, aches, pains are all systems of interrupting confronting and are the symptoms of discomfort. So God forbid your eyes are dry. That's interrupting confronting. Just because you blink, you swallow, you twitch. They don't... What if you had aches and pains before you even sat down? There are many of these. If they're present, then one is not just being there and perceiving. All of these are such common things that happen so often that for this to mean you can't confront a subject is completely crazy. Like, can you imagine sitting there, blinking, swallowing, twitching, and having aches and pains, and someone says to you that you are not confronting the subject properly? That makes no sense and causes people to fake their reactions. Confronting on a via using a relay point is another method of ducking out of it. What do you mean confronting using a relay point? The worst, like a video camera? Is that a... Hubbard has a lot of words and sentences that he mentions things about, but doesn't give any additional interpretation on, or definition, whatever, and leaves it up to the reader, but the reader can't interpret for somebody because that's verbal tech, and you have to go back to the material to see what Hubbard said. But if you go back what Hubbard said, you're just looking at the same shit over and over again. You may even get a different interpretation than the first one you got. So there is no way to actually figure out what the fuck he means by that. The worst off cannot even tolerate the idea of being there and perceiving anything. They run away, even go into emotional fits, rather than be there and perceive. Such people's lives are a system of interruptions and vias, all substitutes for confronting. They're not very successful, for success in life depends not on running away from it, but by being there and perceiving it, and then being able to communicate with it and handle it. Terms. A gradient scale means a gradual increasing of, or a little more of, little by little. A skipped gradient means taking on a higher degree or amount before a lesser degree of it has been handled. One has to go back and handle the missed degree or thing, or else one will just have losses on a subject thereafter. Flattening something means to do it until it no longer produces a reaction. Overrunning something means accumulating protests and upsets about it until it's just a mass of stops. Again, the language that he uses. Anyone can do anything forever unless he begins to stop it. That's bullshit. Invalidation means a refuting or degrading or discrediting or denying something someone else considers to be a fact. They can consider it to be a fact all they want, but if it's not a fact, it's not a fact. And auditors are not supposed to invalidate PCs. You can't invalidate anyone in Scientology, because otherwise you're going to get into ethics trouble. But invalidating, discrediting. Maybe someone needs to be discredited. Maybe they are spouting garbage like L. Ron Hubbard, and they need to be discredited. It's not invalidation just because your feelings are hurt and that your opinion isn't recognized. But anyway, gradients. Some of the things one would have to be able to be there and perceive in order to study, placed on a graduated scale of increasing difficulty, are beginning at all, the classroom or workspace. So some of the things one would have to be able to be there. So they would have beginning at all, the classroom or workspace. They'd have paper, they'd have books, writing materials, sounds, a student, the supervisor, the area of the study subject's physical components, the motionless equipment of the subject, the moving equipment of the subject, masses connected with the subject, and the subject as a whole. The next stages would have to be confronting while moving. This requires a consecutive being there and perceiving, even though one is occupying different locations. What does that mean? Like, does that include working with the clay, confronting while moving an object? The next stages would be confronting selectively while moving despite other things seeking to distract. That's called focusing on something. You don't need to give it this entire long definition. Just call it what it is. It's focusing. This bulletin is not an effort to set out the numerous confronting drills. I wish it was, because I wish I could understand what the hell you meant. It's intended to set out the various axioms or laws necessary to an understanding of the subject of confronting itself. From these brief notes, all the axioms can be derived. The fundamental and basic simplicities of confronting itself is the first thing that must be grasped. All complexity surrounding any subject or action is derived, comes from, a greater or lesser inability to confront. Alright. We'll try one more. See how long that one is. Duplication drill? Nope, that's an excerpt from a lecture. Education, that's another lecture. Educational process, that's another reference to a lecture. Alright, what is a course? I believe we've already read this, but we're going to read it anyway. HCO Policy Letter of the 16th of March 71, revised the 29th of January 75. In Scientology, a course consists of a check sheet with all the actions and material listed on it and all the materials on the check sheet available in the same order. Check sheet material means the policy letters, bulletins, tapes, Mimeo issues, any reference book, or any books mentioned. Materials also include clay, furniture, tape players, bulletin boards, routing forms, supplies of pink sheets, roll books, student files, file cabinets, and any other items that will be needed. If you look this over carefully, it does not say materials on order, or except for those we haven't got, or in different order. It means what it says exactly. If a student is to have auditing or word clearing rundowns, or must do auditing, those are under actions and appear on the check sheet. A course must have a supervisor. He may or may not be a graduate and experienced practitioner of the course he's supervising, but he must be a trained course supervisor. I believe you should be an experienced practitioner of the course that you're supervising, even if you're not teaching it. But at least help people to understand. Don't just send them back to the materials where they're just going to get lost again. He's not expected to teach. He's expected to get the students there, roles called, checkouts properly done, misunderstoods handled by finding what the student doesn't dig and getting the student to dig it. The supervisor who tells students answers is a waste of time and a course destroyer, as he enters out data into the scene, even if trained, and actually especially if trained in the subject. The supervisor is not an instructor. That's why he's called a supervisor. So you're saying he's entering out data, even if trained. So if he's trained, then he is probably telling you the truth or giving you correct information on something. I don't see how that's out data. It's out. It's verbal tech, which is off policy. Pretty sure. But again, a supervisor's skill is in spotting dope-off, glee, and other manifestations of misunderstoods and getting it cleaned up, not in knowing the data so he can tell the student. A supervisor should have an idea of what questions he'll be asked and know where to direct the student for the answer. Student blows follow misunderstoods. A supervisor who's on the ball never has blows, as he caught them before they happened by observing the student's misunderstanding before the student does and getting it tracked down by the student. If a student blows, something may be happening in their home. doesn't mean they have a misunderstood word if their house burned down or if they lost their job. It's the supervisor's job to get the student through the check sheet fully and swiftly with minimum lost time. The successful supervisor is tough. He's not a kindly old fumbler. He sets high check sheet targets for each student for the day and forces them to be met or else. The supervisor is spending supervisor minutes. He has just so many to spend. He's spending student hours. He has just so many of these to spend, so he gets them spent wisely and saves any waste of them. A supervisor in a course of any size has a course admin who has very exact duties in keeping up course admin and handing out and getting back materials and not losing any due to damage or carelessness. If paragraphs 1 to 3 above are violated, it is the course administrator who is at fault. He must have check sheets and the matching material in adequate quantity to serve the course. If he doesn't, he has telexes flying and mimeo sweating. The course admin is in charge of routing lines, communication lines, and proper send-off and return of students to cramming or auditing or ethics. The final and essential part of a course is students. If a course conforms with this policy letter exactly with no quibbles, is tough, precisely time-scheduled, and run hard, it'll be a full expanding course and very successful. If it varies from this policy letter, it'll stack up bodies in the shop, get blows, and incompetent graduates. Bodies in the shop is people in the org, so it'll build up people in the org to the point where they can't handle that many people. Get blows, people leaving, and incompetent graduates. That speaks for itself. The final valuable product of any course is graduates who can apply successfully the material they studied and be successful in the subject. This answers the question, what is a course? If any of these points are out, it's not a Scientology course and will not be successful. Thus, the order put a course there means this PL is in full force. So here's the order. When offering training, put a course there. If any of these points are out, it's not a Scientology course. Yeah, any school with a teacher is not a Scientology course, and they're much more successful than Scientology. So, that's shows how incompetent you are. But, alright, so we got courses, the ideal scene. I believe this is 2 pages. Yeah, we'll cover this in the next video. I know this video has had a lot of breaks and cuts in it. It's because it was filmed over several different days. I just needed to get this started again because we're so close to the end. At least I'm pretty sure. We skipped all those lectures, so that took out a shit ton of pages. Yeah, we're only 43 pages away from the end. We're gonna get there, and half of them are probably blank due to the separation between policies and technical bulletins. But again, thank you guys for watching part 7. I hope you enjoy it. Like if you do, dislike if you don't. I don't care. YouTube doesn't show me dislikes anyway. Comment with any feedback or questions, good, bad, or sideways. And subscribe if you'd like to be kept up to date on any future content. I do want to say I cannot wait for a future video that I'm going to be putting out later on my channel. It's going to be... I'm really excited about it. It's not going to be probably any time within the next week or so, but hopefully it should be before like mid-March. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm really excited, and I hope you guys are too, because this is going to be all about tech. I will talk to all of you later. See ya.